I'm Garrett Mitchell, 34 years old and a successful app developer living in San Francisco. Last month, I sent $15,000 to my family to organize a reunion in my hometown. When I arrived at the venue, it was empty. My phone rang. It was my dad laughing. "The reunion was yesterday, Garrett. We'll bring you some leftovers if you want." They thought they could get away with this like everything else they'd done to me. They were wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had family take advantage of your success. I grew up in Oak Ridge, a small town in Michigan where everyone knows everyone. My parents, Bradley and Nancy Mitchell, raised 4 kids in a modest 3-bedroom house on Maple Street. I was the third child, after my brother Warren and sister Patricia, with my younger sister Dorothy completing our family. From the outside, we probably looked like your typical American family, but appearances can be deceiving. For as long as I can remember, I was the family outcast. Warren was the athletic golden boy who could do no wrong in my father's eyes. Patricia was the academic star who made our mother proud with her straight A's and perfect attendance. Dorothy, being the baby of the family, was spoiled and protected. And me? I was the dreamer. The one with unrealistic expectations, as my father often said. When other kids got encouragement for their interests, I got eye rolls and dismissive remarks. At 10, I built a computer from salvaged parts, and my father said I was wasting time. At 13, I created a primitive website for a local business and earned $50. My mother made me give it to Warren for his football equipment. At 16, when I won a regional coding competition, my parents didn't even attend. Patricia had a debate tournament the same day, and that was deemed more important. "Computers are a fad," my father would say. "You need a real skill, son." This was in 2006, when technology was clearly reshaping the world. But Bradley Mitchell, master plumber and local football coach, knew better than the global economy. High school was particularly rough. Warren was the quarterback with college scouts visiting our games. Patricia was valedictorian with scholarship offers piling up. I was the weird kid who spent lunch breaks coding in the computer lab instead of socializing. My parents attended every football game and academic ceremony but never once came to a technology competition or checked on my projects. When I was accepted to a computer science program in California with a partial scholarship, my parents were furious. They had expected me to stay local, maybe attend community college or work in one of the factories like most kids from Oak Ridge. "You're abandoning your family," my mother accused during a particularly heated dinner argument. "After all we've done for you." I looked around the table at my siblings, who were unusually quiet. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked, not disrespectfully, but genuinely curious. "You've never supported my interests or believed in my goals." My father slammed his fist on the table. "We put a roof over your head and food in your mouth. That's what we did. And this is how you repay us? By running off to California to play with computers?" I left home the next day with $800 I'd saved from freelance coding jobs, a duffel bag of clothes, and my laptop. No one came to say goodbye at the bus station. The early years in California were tough. I worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. I lived in a tiny apartment with 4 other students to save money. Holidays were spent alone or with friends' families who took pity on the kid who couldn't afford to go home, though truth be told, I wasn't sure I'd have been welcome anyway. Communication with my family was sporadic at best. My parents called occasionally, usually when they needed something. Warren needed money for a car repair. Patricia's laptop broke and she needed a new one for grad school. Dorothy's prom dress was more expensive than anticipated. Each time, I sent what I could, even when it meant eating ramen for weeks. After graduation, I landed a job at a startup and began developing my own apps on the side. My first few attempts failed, but I learned from each mistake. I lived frugally and reinvested every spare dollar into my business. When my fourth app, a productivity tool for remote workers, gained traction, things started to change. Suddenly, my family was interested in my life. My mother called more frequently. My father mentioned me to his friends. Warren asked for investment advice. Patricia wanted me to speak to her students about technology careers. Dorothy started tagging me in social media posts, proud of her tech genius brother. I wasn't naive. I understood what had changed. I was finally successful in their eyes. My app had been purchased by a major tech company for several $1 million. I was featured in technology magazines and invited to speak at conferences. The son they had dismissed as a dreamer had become someone they could brag about. Part of me wanted to shut them out completely, to give them a taste of the rejection I'd experienced. But another part, perhaps the still hopeful child within me, wanted reconciliation. Maybe now that I'd proven myself, we could build a healthier relationship. Maybe they'd finally see me for who I was rather than who they wanted me to be. That hope, as misguided as it may have been, is what led me to say yes when my mother called last spring with the idea of a family reunion. "We haven't all been together in years," she said, her voice unusually warm. "It would be good to heal old wounds, don't you think? The extended family keeps asking about you, too. Everyone's so proud of what you've accomplished." I should have recognized the warning signs. The sudden interest. The emphasis on my accomplishments rather than my well-being. The mention of extended family who might be impressed by my success. But I was blinded by that persistent hope for family connection that never quite dies, no matter how many times it's disappointed. "That sounds nice, Mom," I said. "I'd like that." I had no idea I was setting myself up for the cruelest betrayal yet. The planning began immediately after that phone call. My mother suggested the first weekend in July, as most relatives would be available then. She proposed holding it at Oak Ridge Community Center, which had a large event space and kitchen facilities. "That sounds perfect," I agreed. "I'm happy to cover the costs. This reunion is important to me." "Oh, sweetheart, that's so generous," my mother gushed. "But are you sure? These things can get expensive." I assured her that money wasn't an issue. In truth, I saw this as an investment in rebuilding family connections. What was $15,000 compared to the possibility of healing decades of emotional distance? Over the next few weeks, I had regular calls with my mother about the arrangements. She sent me lists of relatives who had confirmed attendance, menu options from the caterer, decoration ideas, and even a custom t-shirt design with our family name. I approved everything enthusiastically and transferred funds as requested. "We're thinking of having professional photographers," my mother mentioned during one call. "And perhaps hiring a local band for entertainment. Would that be all right?" "Whatever will make the reunion special," I said. "I want everyone to have a great time." I even suggested adding special touches, personalized gift bags for each attendee, a video montage of family photos, a catered breakfast the morning after for anyone staying in town. My mother accepted each idea with enthusiasm, though in retrospect, her excitement had more to do with the budget increases than the thoughtfulness of the gestures. Throughout the planning process, I had limited contact with my siblings. Warren sent a brief text saying he was looking forward to seeing me. Patricia emailed to ask if I could bring some tech gadgets as prizes for family games. Dorothy called once, sounding genuinely excited about the reunion, though the conversation turned quickly to whether I could help her with a down payment on a new car. About a month before the reunion, I reached out to the Oak Ridge Community Center directly to confirm the arrangements. The manager seemed confused initially but then confirmed they had a booking under Mitchell for July 1st. "I just wanted to make sure everything's on track," I explained. "This reunion means a lot to me." "No problem, sir," the manager assured me. "We've received the deposit and menu selections. Everything is set for July 1st. I also contacted the caterer and the photographer my mother had supposedly hired. Both confirmed their bookings. Though the photographer mentioned she'd been asked to arrive at noon rather than the 3 o'clock start time I'd been told. I dismissed this as a simple miscommunication. 2 weeks before the reunion, I called my mother to confirm final details. "Everything's all set," she assured me. "Everyone's so excited to see you, Garrett. Your success has been such an inspiration to the family." There it was again, the focus on my success rather than our relationship. But I pushed aside my discomfort. This reunion was about building bridges, not dwelling on past hurts. "I'm looking forward to it too, Mom. It's been too long." "What time does your flight get in?" she asked. "I'll arrive at Detroit Metropolitan at noon on the 1st. I should be in Oak Ridge by 2:30, which gives me plenty of time before the 3 o'clock start." "Perfect," she said. "We can't wait to see you." In the days leading up to the reunion, I selected thoughtful gifts for each family member. For my father, a high-end fishing rod he'd once admired in a catalog. For my mother, a designer handbag she'd mentioned wanting. For Warren, tickets to a Lions game. For Patricia, a new laptop for her classroom. For Dorothy, jewelry from a boutique she followed on Instagram. For my aunts, uncles, and cousins, I brought California specialties and tech gadgets. I packed my best clothes, had my hair cut, and even practiced what I might say in conversations with relatives I hadn't seen in years. I wanted to be open and authentic, to show them who I'd become without flaunting my success. The night before my flight, I received a text from Dorothy. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, big bro. It's going to be amazing." That text, which I now realize was part of the charade, was the last communication I had with any family member before boarding my flight to Michigan the next morning. As the plane took off from San Francisco, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. I was going home, not just to a place but to people who had shaped me, for better and worse. I truly believed this reunion could be a new beginning for all of us. I had no idea I was flying straight into a carefully orchestrated humiliation. My flight landed at Detroit Metropolitan Airport right on schedule. I rented a car and began the 90-minute drive to Oak Ridge, watching familiar landscapes replace the metropolitan sprawl. Fields of corn and soybeans. Roadside produce stands. Billboards advertising local businesses. It felt strange how little had changed while my own life had transformed so dramatically. I arrived in Oak Ridge at 2:25, right on schedule. The town looked much as I remembered, the same main street with its hardware store and diner, the same water tower looming over the tree line. The same town square where we'd watched 4th of July fireworks as kids. I drove directly to the Oak Ridge Community Center, a brick building near the high school that had been renovated since my departure. The parking lot was nearly empty, which struck me as odd. Shouldn't relatives be arriving by now? I parked and gathered a few of the gifts from my trunk, planning to return for the rest once I'd greeted everyone. The front door was unlocked, but the lobby was deserted. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" A middle-aged woman emerged from an office. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the Mitchell family reunion," I explained, setting down my bags. The woman's expression shifted to something like pity. "The Mitchell reunion was yesterday, sir." "Yesterday?" I repeated, certain I'd misheard. "No, it's scheduled for today. July 1st. Starting at 3. She shook her head. "It was June 30th. They were here from noon until about 9 last night." My mind struggled to process this information. There must be some mistake. "I spoke directly with you folks a month ago. You confirmed July 1st. Let me check our records," she offered, returning to her office. While I waited, I pulled out my phone to call my mother. No answer. I tried my father, then each of my siblings. All went to voicemail. A cold feeling began spreading through my chest. The woman returned with a printout. "Here's the original booking, sir." It was for June 30th, noon to 10 p.m. And yes, I see you called to confirm, but the date had already been changed by that point. Your mother requested the change 2 days after making the initial reservation. Change the date? I repeated numbly. Without telling me? I'm very sorry, she said, looking genuinely uncomfortable. The event went forward as scheduled. Your family was here, quite a large gathering, actually. As if on cue, my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately. Dad? There's some confusion. The community center says the reunion was yesterday. His laugh came through the speaker, loud enough that the center manager could likely hear it. No confusion, son. We decided to move it up a day. Didn't your mother tell you? No, I said, my voice hollow. No one told me anything. More laughter, and I could hear other voices in the background. My mother, Warren, others I couldn't identify. They were together, probably at my parents' house. Well, you missed a hell of a party. My father continued. Everyone was asking about you. We told them your fancy California schedule must have kept you too busy for family. The casual cruelty of it struck me like a physical blow. Dad, I flew in specifically for this. I've been planning for months. I paid for everything. And we appreciate that, son, he said, not sounding appreciative at all. Tell you what, we've got plenty of leftovers. We can bring you some if you want. The caterer you hired was top-notch. More laughter erupted in the background. I heard my mother call out, Tell him we saved him some cake, followed by what sounded like my brother adding, The champagne's all gone though, sorry. I stood there in the empty community center, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my family laugh at the humiliation they had orchestrated. They had taken my money, changed the date without telling me, held the event without me, and were now mocking my absence, an absence they had deliberately engineered. Why? I finally managed to ask. Why would you do this? My father's voice turned cold. Consider it a reminder. Garrett, you may be some big shot in California now, but here, you're still just a weird kid who thought he was better than everyone else. Money can't buy you a place in this family. The call ended. I stood motionless, the phone still at my ear, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what had just happened. The community center manager touched my arm gently. Sir? Are you all right? I wasn't all right. Not even close. But I nodded, thanked her for her help, and walked back to my rental car in a daze. I sat behind the wheel for several minutes, hands shaking too badly to insert the key. Once I'd composed myself somewhat, I drove to my parents' house. I needed to see them face to face, to understand if this was some elaborate misunderstanding or if they had truly been this calculatingly cruel. The driveway was full of cars when I arrived. Extended family members were indeed still in town. I parked on the street and approached the house I'd grown up in, hearing laughter and music from inside. I knocked rather than using my old key. My mother answered, her smile dropping when she saw me. Garrett, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow. The lie was so brazen it momentarily left me speechless. Can I come in? I finally asked. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The living room was full of relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, many wearing custom t-shirts with Mitchell Family Reunion 2023 printed on them. In the corner stood a professional photographer, packing up equipment I had paid for. Conversations quieted as I entered. My father emerged from the kitchen, holding a beer. Look who decided to join us after all, he announced. The California millionaire. A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. I noticed my siblings watching from different corners, Warren smirking, Patricia looking slightly uncomfortable but saying nothing, Dorothy suddenly very interested in her phone. On the dining table sat gifts, expensive items I recognized from the list I'd approved. A new grill, designer sunglasses, electronic devices still in their packaging. None of these had been on the reunion budget. These were personal items my parents had purchased with my money. Where did all this come from? I asked, gesturing to the gifts. My mother waved dismissively. Just a few things we picked up. The reunion budget had some flexibility. Flexibility? I repeated. I sent $15,000 for the reunion. The venue and catering couldn't have cost more than $7,000. Uncomfortable silence fell. Some relatives began finding reasons to step outside or visit the bathroom. Now listen, my father started, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he'd always used to shut down my questions as a child. We've provided for you your entire life. If we decided to enjoy a little of that money ourselves, we're entitled to it. Provided for me? I echoed, disbelief coloring my voice. You never supported anything I cared about. You mocked my interests, dismissed my goals. And now you've stolen from me and humiliated me in front of the entire family. Don't be so dramatic. My mother interjected. It was just a little joke. And as for the money, we're family. What's yours is ours. I looked around the room at the relatives who remained, people who had participated in this charade, who had known I wasn't invited to my own reunion and said nothing. People wearing shirts and eating food and enjoying entertainment that I had paid for, while laughing behind my back. I could have shouted. I could have demanded my money back. I could have created a scene that would have given the family gossip for years to come. Instead, I simply turned and walked out, ignoring my mother's suddenly concerned calls of, Garrett? Where are you going? I got in my car and drove away, the weight of a lifetime of rejection pressing down on me like never before. But something was different this time. As the hurt and shock began to subside, another emotion took its place. Resolve. This would be the last time they took advantage of me. The last time they treated me as less than I was worth. The last time I extended trust only to have it shattered. I checked into the Oak Ridge Inn, a small hotel on the edge of town, and began making calls. The hotel room was small but clean, with generic landscape paintings on the walls and a bed that had seen better days. I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at nothing in particular as I tried to process everything that had happened. My phone buzzed repeatedly with text messages and calls from various family members. I ignored them all, instead opening my laptop and logging into my bank account. The $15,000 transfer to my parents' joint account had cleared 3 weeks ago. I examined my records of the conversations about the reunion budget, the lists of approved expenses, the agreements about how the money would be spent. Next, I opened social media. There they were, dozens of photos from the reunion posted by various relatives. Smiling faces around decorated tables at the community center. My parents cutting a cake with Mitchell Family Reunion written in frosting. My siblings posing with cousins I hadn't seen in years. Everyone looking happy, celebrating together, while I was deliberately excluded. What made the betrayal even more painful were the captions. Complete family gathering. Everyone together again. The whole Mitchell clan reunited. Lies. All of them. I wasn't there. I was never meant to be there. But it got worse. As I scrolled through more photos, I found comments that referenced me directly. Too bad Garrett couldn't be bothered to attend his own family reunion. Some people get too important for family once they make it big. Guess money changes people. Shame he didn't show up. They had not only excluded me, they had vilified me. Made me the villain in a narrative they had crafted. The ungrateful son who abandoned his roots. The selfish success story who couldn't spare time for the people who raised him. I switched to my text messages. Most were from relatives expressing surprise at my no-show. A few were more direct. Heard you stood up the whole family. Not cool, cousin. Your mom was in tears when you didn't show. How could you do that to her? Always thought you were different. Guess the rumors about your big ego are true. Then I found the thread that confirmed my suspicions. A group chat between my parents and siblings that I'd been accidentally included in months ago, but had remained silent in. I scrolled back to messages from 2 weeks before the reunion. Mom. Everything's set for the 30th. Garrett still thinks it's on the 1st. Warren. Is he really going to fly all the way here just to find an empty venue? That's cold, Mom. Dad. He deserves it after how he's been lording his success over us. Time he learned some humility. Patricia. I don't know about this. Seems pretty mean. Dorothy. It's just a joke. Plus we get a free party out of it. Win-win. Mom. Don't worry, we'll tell him we miscommunicated. He's got plenty of money for another flight if he still wants to see everyone. More recent messages showed they had been tracking my flight, knew exactly when I would arrive, and had been placing bets on my reaction. They had orchestrated every detail of this humiliation. But perhaps most disturbing was the evidence of financial misappropriation. Photos showed my parents with a new television that had definitely not been on the reunion budget. Warren posted about his new golf clubs, with a winking emoji. Patricia shared pictures of designer shoes. Dorothy flaunted jewelry that looked suspiciously like pieces from high-end brands. They had used the reunion as a pretext to extract money from me for their personal gain. The actual event had cost perhaps a third of what I'd sent, with the rest diverted to their own wishes. As the reality of the situation sank in, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally I would have ignored it, but something compelled me to answer. Hello? Garrett? It's your Aunt Linda. Your mom's sister. Aunt Linda had always been kind to me. One of the few relatives who had shown genuine interest in my life and achievements without wanting anything in return. Hi, Aunt Linda, I said wearily. I just heard what happened, she said, her voice tight with anger. I want you to know I had no idea they changed the date without telling you. Most of us didn't. We were told you had a last-minute emergency and couldn't make it. A small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. At least not everyone had been in on the deception. They took the money I sent for the reunion and spent it on themselves. I told her. I suspected as much, she replied. The event was nice but not $15,000 nice. And suddenly everyone had new gifts they were showing off. She paused. What are you going to do? It was a question I'd been asking myself since walking out of my parents' house. What could I do? They would deny any wrongdoing. They would twist the narrative. Make me seem petty for being upset about it. Miscommunication. They would paint me as the wealthy son begrudging his family a few nice things. I don't know yet, I admitted. Whatever you decide. I support you, Aunt Linda said firmly. What they did was wrong. Plain and simple. After we hung up, I called my friend Marcus, a corporate attorney in San Francisco. They committed fraud. He said bluntly after I explained the situation. You transferred money for a specific purpose, with clear agreements about how it would be used. They misappropriated those funds for personal purchases, deliberately excluded you from an event you paid for, and then lied about it. That's textbook fraud. What are my options? I asked. You could file a police report. Press charges. Sue for the return of the misappropriated funds, Marcus outlined. Or you could write it off as an expensive lesson about your family's character. Part of me wanted to take the second option. To walk away, cut ties completely, and rebuild my life without the people who had caused me so much pain. It would certainly be easier. But something in me rebelled against that idea. All my life, I had allowed my family to mistreat me. I had accepted their dismissal, their mockery, their conditional acceptance. I had extended trust and forgiveness repeatedly, only to be hurt again and again. This time needed to be different. Not out of vengeance, but out of self-respect. Not to hurt them, but to stand up for myself. I spent hours reviewing bank statements, gathering screenshots of social media posts, saving text messages and emails that documented the fraud. I prepared a detailed accounting of the money sent versus legitimate reunion expenses. As the night deepened, I found myself staring at old family photos I'd kept on my laptop. Birthday celebrations where my achievements went unmentioned. Graduation where my parents looked bored rather than proud. Christmas mornings where my siblings received thoughtful gifts while I got generic gift cards. The pattern had been clear all along. I had simply refused to see it. Around 3 in the morning, I made my decision. I would not allow this to be just another incident I silently endured. I would not permit them to rewrite this story with me as the villain. I would stand up for the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. I drafted a detailed account of what had happened, gathered all my evidence, and prepared to take action in the morning. For the first time in my life, I was choosing self-respect over the desperate hope for family acceptance. As dawn broke over Oak Ridge, I finally fell into an exhausted sleep, my path forward clear at last. I woke to more missed calls and text messages from family members, ranging from angry demands for explanation to half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. I ignored them all and prepared for the day ahead, showering and dressing in a crisp button-down shirt and slacks. If I was going to do this, I would do it properly. At 9 o'clock sharp, I walked into the Oak Ridge Police Department. The front desk officer looked up as I approached. "Good morning," I said. "I'd like to file a fraud report." I was directed to a small interview room where I met with Officer Reynolds, a middle-aged man with a careful, methodical demeanor. He listened without interruption as I explained the situation, taking detailed notes and examining the evidence I'd brought: bank statements, text messages, emails, social media screenshots, and my own written account of events. "This is thorough," he commented when I finished. "Most people don't come in with this level of documentation." I wanted to be clear about exactly what happened. I explained. "I know it might seem petty to some, it's family, after all, but this was deliberate fraud." Officer Reynolds nodded. "Fraud is fraud, regardless of who commits it. Family relationship doesn't make it legal." He gathered the papers I'd provided. "I'll need to make copies of these, then we'll proceed with a formal report." While waiting, I received a call from the manager of Oak Ridge Community Center. "Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to follow up after yesterday," she said. "I felt terrible about what happened, and I've been thinking about it. I have security camera footage from the day of the reunion that clearly shows your family arriving and the event taking place. I also have the paperwork showing that the date was changed after your confirmation call. If that would be helpful to you, I'm willing to provide it." I thanked her sincerely for the offer and explained that I was currently at the police station. She promised to have everything ready when officers came to collect it. Next, I called my bank and explained the situation to their fraud department. They were able to provide documentation of the wire transfer and the specific instructions that had accompanied it regarding the purpose of the funds. Officer Reynolds returned with my paperwork and additional forms to complete. "We'll need to take official statements," he explained. "Then we'll investigate, including interviewing your family members and gathering evidence from the community center and any other relevant parties." "Will they know I filed the report?" I asked. "Yes," he said candidly. "They'll be informed during the investigation. Are you prepared for that?" I considered the question carefully. Once this process began, there would be no going back. No pretending it was all a misunderstanding. No sweeping it under the rug as had happened with so many other incidents throughout my life. "I'm prepared," I confirmed. "This needs to stop." After completing the paperwork, I provided contact information for key witnesses: the community center manager, the caterer, the photographer, and relatives like Aunt Linda who could verify aspects of my account. "What happens next?" I asked as we concluded. "We'll investigate and gather evidence," Officer Reynolds explained. "If we find sufficient evidence of fraud, the case will be referred to the district attorney, who will decide whether to press charges. Given the amount of money involved, this would likely be classified as grand theft, which is a felony." The word felony hung in the air. I hadn't fully considered that my parents could face serious criminal charges. But then I reminded myself, they had made deliberate choices. They had planned this deception, executed it methodically, and shown no remorse. In fact, they had laughed about it. I understand, I said finally. Please proceed with the investigation. From the police station, I went to my bank's local branch to file an additional fraud report. The manager was professional but clearly uncomfortable. Oak Ridge was a small town, and everyone knew the Mitchell family. This is an unusual situation, Mr. Mitchell, she said carefully. Filing fraud charges against family members. I understand it's uncomfortable, I acknowledged. But the facts are clear. Money was transferred for a specific purpose, with explicit agreements about how it would be used. It was then misappropriated for personal purchases, and I was deliberately excluded from the event I funded. If this were any other situation, a business associate, a charity, a stranger, would there be any question about whether fraud had occurred? She conceded the point and proceeded with the formal report. By early afternoon, the initial steps had been taken. The police investigation was underway. The bank fraud report was filed. The community center was cooperating with authorities. I returned to my hotel room and sat down to compose an email to the extended family members who had attended the reunion. I wanted them to hear the truth from me before the inevitable gossip and distortions began circulating. The email was straightforward and factual, explaining that I had indeed sent money for the reunion, had been deliberately given the wrong date, and had arrived to find the event had already taken place without me. I clarified that contrary to what they may have been told, I had not chosen to skip the reunion or forgotten about it. I had been intentionally excluded by my immediate family. I'm not sending this to cause drama or seek sympathy, I wrote in closing. I simply want the truth to be known. What you choose to do with this information is entirely up to you. I sent the email to everyone except my parents and siblings. They would learn about my actions soon enough from the police. As if on cue, my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. This time I answered. What the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded without preamble. The police just called wanting to ask us some questions about the reunion money. I filed a fraud report, I said calmly. You took money that was intended for a specific purpose, spent it on yourselves, and deliberately excluded me from an event I paid for. We're your parents, he shouted. You can't file police reports against your own parents. Actually, I can. And I did. This is about money? Really? You're so rich now that you can't spare a few $1,000s for your family? This isn't about money, I corrected him. This is about respect. About truth. About consequences for deliberate cruelty. You've always been dramatic, he sneered. Always playing the victim. Not anymore, I replied. I'm not a victim. I'm someone who's finally holding you accountable for your actions. The call ended with his threats of family disownment, an ironic concept, given that I'd never truly been embraced as family to begin with. Within the hour, I received calls from all three siblings. Warren was belligerent, accusing me of betrayal. Patricia was tearful, pleading for me to withdraw the complaint. Dorothy was pragmatic, offering to return the jewelry she'd bought if I would make this go away. I gave them all the same answer. It was too late. The investigation was proceeding. The truth would come out. And for once, there would be consequences for the ways they had hurt me. As evening fell, I felt strangely calm. There was no going back to the way things had been, but perhaps that was for the best. For too long, I had accepted mistreatment as the price of admission to a family that never truly valued me. Now, I was choosing a different path. One with boundaries, self-respect, and truth. Whatever happened next, I would face it standing tall, no longer the family doormat but a man who had finally said, enough. The next morning began with a knock on my hotel room door. Officer Reynolds stood in the hallway with a female officer I hadn't met. Mr. Mitchell, we'd like to update you on the investigation, he said. May we come in? I invited them in and offered coffee, which they declined. We executed a search warrant at your parents' residence this morning, Officer Reynolds began. Based on the evidence you provided and statements from the community center staff, we had sufficient cause. The female officer, who introduced herself as Detective Morales, continued. We recovered several items that appeared to have been purchased with the funds you provided for the reunion. A 65-inch television, golf clubs, designer shoes, jewelry, electronics. These items matched the purchases you identified in your report. How did they react? I asked, not sure if I really wanted to know. Officer Reynolds and Detective Morales exchanged glances. Initially with disbelief, Reynolds said carefully. Your father insisted we had no right to be there. Your mother became quite emotional. They both maintained that there was no fraud. Just a family misunderstanding. That changed when we presented the evidence. Detective Morales added. The altered dates on the community center booking. The text messages planning the deception. The social media posts. The bank records showing transfers from your parents' account to various retailers immediately after receiving your money. We've taken them to the station for formal questioning. Reynolds concluded. Your siblings as well, as the evidence suggests they were aware of and participated in the plan. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. Despite everything, I hadn't fully prepared myself for the reality of my family being questioned at the police station. The image of my parents and siblings sitting in interview rooms, facing detectives across metal tables, struck me with unexpected force. What happens now? I asked. The investigation continues. Detective Morales explained. We'll gather all available evidence, take statements from witnesses, and build a complete case file. That will be presented to the district attorney, who will make the final decision about criminal charges. They left shortly after, promising to keep me updated on any significant developments. I hadn't been back in my room for an hour when my phone began ringing with calls from extended family. News travels fast in small towns, and the sight of police cars at the Mitchell house had set the gossip mill working overtime. My Aunt Linda called first. Is it true? They're at the police station? Yes, I confirmed. The police found evidence supporting the fraud charges. Good, she said firmly. I love my sister, but what they did to you was despicable. Sometimes people need consequences to understand the harm they've caused. Other calls were less supportive. Uncle Robert berated me for airing family dirty laundry and making a mountain out of a molehill. Cousin Jennifer accused me of using my money to buy revenge against people who had always supported me. Several relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my decision to involve law enforcement in a private family matter. The division among the extended family was becoming clear. Some saw the situation for what it was, a deliberate act of cruelty and theft. Others were willing to excuse almost any behavior under the banner of family loyalty. Around noon, I received a call from a local number I didn't recognize. Mr. Mitchell? This is Karen from the Oak Ridge Gazette. We've heard reports about a police investigation involving your family. Would you care to comment? I declined politely but firmly. Then immediately called Detective Morales to alert her about the media interest. She assured me that the department would not comment on an ongoing investigation and advised me to maintain the same position. By mid-afternoon, my siblings had been released from questioning. Warren called immediately, his voice a mixture of anger and fear. They're talking about pressing charges, Garrett. Actual criminal charges. Do you have any idea what that would do to Mom and Dad? To all of us? I didn't create this situation. I reminded him. You all did. You took my money, excluded me from an event I paid for, and then laughed about it. It was just a joke that went too far, he insisted. We were going to tell you the truth eventually. When? After spending all the money? After telling everyone I was too selfish to attend my own family reunion? You've made your point, he said, his tone shifting to one I recognized from childhood, the voice he used when trying to manipulate me into doing what he wanted. You've embarrassed us in front of the whole town. Isn't that enough? Do you really need to see Mom and Dad in court? This isn't about revenge, I told him. It's about accountability. For once, I'm not letting it go. For once, there are consequences. Patricia called next, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Please, Garrett, she begged. Please drop the charges. We'll pay you back. We'll tell everyone the truth. We'll do anything. Where was this remorse yesterday? I asked. When you were all laughing at me? When you were spending my money on shoes and golf clubs? I know we were wrong, she admitted. I knew it then. I should have said something, done something. I was a coward. Her admission was the first genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing I'd heard from any of them. But it came only after being caught. Only after facing potential consequences. I appreciate your honesty, I said carefully. But I can't stop the investigation. It's in the hands of the police and district attorney now. Dorothy's approach was different, practical rather than emotional. The police took the jewelry, she informed me, and Dad's new TV, Mom's shoes, Warren's golf clubs. Everything they think was bought with your money. I'm aware, I replied. So you've got it all back, she reasoned. Or you will. Why continue with this? No one was physically hurt. It was a mean prank that went too far, but does it really justify criminal charges? Her question made me pause. Was I overreacting? Was this too extreme a response to what they'd done? But then I remembered the laughter on the phone. The deliberate planning. The weeks of deception. The willingness to humiliate me in front of the entire extended family. The absolute lack of remorse until consequences appeared. This isn't just about the money, I explained. It's about a lifetime of being dismissed, mocked, and taken advantage of. It's about drawing a line and saying no more. By evening, my parents had been released pending further investigation. They didn't call. Instead, I received a formal letter from an attorney they had retained, warning me against making defamatory statements about them and suggesting that a reasonable financial settlement could resolve the matter without further damage to family relationships. The letter struck me as so typically them, concerned about appearances, offering money as a solution, and completely missing the point about the real damage to our relationship, which had nothing to do with finances and everything to do with respect. I forwarded the letter to Marcus, who assured me it was largely posturing and advised me to continue cooperating with the investigation while avoiding direct contact with my parents or their attorney. As the day ended, I received one final call from Detective Morales. Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to let you know that we've completed our initial investigation. Based on the evidence, the district attorney has decided to proceed with charges against your parents for fraud and theft. Your siblings will not be charged at this time, though they may be called as witnesses. What happens next? I asked, feeling a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. Your parents will be formally charged at an arraignment next week. Given their lack of prior criminal history and the nature of the offense, they'll likely be released on their own recognizance pending trial. Will there actually be a trial? The thought of testifying against my own parents in court was surreal. Most cases like this end in plea agreements, she explained. But that's up to the district attorney and your parents' lawyer to negotiate. After the call ended, I sat by the window of my hotel room, looking out at the town where I'd grown up. Feeling like a stranger now more than ever. The consequences I had set in motion were real and significant. There was no going back to the way things had been, but perhaps that was for the best. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Linda. Whatever happens, you did the right thing. Some lessons can only be learned the hard way. I hoped she was right. 6 months passed before the legal matters were fully resolved. I returned to California after giving my official statements, keeping in touch with the district attorney's office via phone and email as the case progressed. As Detective Morales had predicted, there was no trial. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of public court proceedings, my parents accepted a plea deal, restitution of the full $15,000, 2 years of probation, and community service. The felony charges were reduced to misdemeanors, sparing them jail time but still resulting in a criminal record. The news reached me via a formal email from the district attorney's office, followed by a call from Aunt Linda. "It's official," she said. "The judge accepted the plea agreement this morning. Bradley and Nancy are on probation for 2 years. How are they taking it?" I asked. "About as well as you'd expect," she replied. "Your father's furious. Your mother's playing the victim. But something interesting is happening with the rest of the family." "What do you mean?" "People are talking," she explained. "Really talking for the first time. About how you've been treated over the years. This incident forced everyone to look at patterns that have been ignored for decades. Some are still defending your parents, of course. But others are reconsidering a lot of past events from a new perspective. This was unexpected. I had filed the charges to stand up for myself, not to change family dynamics. Yet it seemed that my actions had created ripples beyond what I'd anticipated. Over the following months, those ripples continued to spread. I received emails and calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were hostile, accusing me of tearing the family apart. Others were reflective, acknowledging that they had witnessed my mistreatment and remained silent. A few even shared their own stories of being hurt by my parents in various ways. Warren remained angry and defensive, cutting off contact completely. Patricia sent a long, thoughtful letter apologizing for her role in the reunion deception and for years of failing to stand up for me. Dorothy fell somewhere in between, acknowledging wrongdoing but still suggesting I had overreacted. My parents themselves maintained a studied silence. The restitution payment arrived via their attorney, without a note or any personal communication. I hadn't expected apologies, but their complete refusal to acknowledge me confirmed that my decision to maintain distance was the right one. I put the return money into a foundation supporting victims of family financial abuse, a surprisingly common problem with few dedicated resources. The foundation focused on providing both legal assistance and emotional support to people navigating similar situations to what I had experienced. 1 year after the failed reunion, I received an unexpected email from Dorothy. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this past year. At first, I was angry with you for pressing charges. It seemed so extreme. But the mandatory counseling sessions from the court made Mom and Dad talk about things they've always avoided. And watching them try to justify what they did to you, not just with the reunion but over your entire life, opened my eyes. I started therapy myself, trying to understand why I went along with hurting you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that what you did caused changes. Important ones." Her email was followed, weeks later, by a tentative call. Our conversation was awkward but honest. Dorothy was the youngest, the baby of the family who had never known anything but the established dynamics. She was beginning to see how those dynamics had been toxic, not just for me but for all of us in different ways. "Warren's following Dad's lead, refusing to admit any wrongdoing," she told me. "Patricia's in therapy too. She's struggling with a lot of guilt." "And Mom and Dad?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "They're telling everyone who'll listen that you're vindictive and cruel. That no loving son would put his parents through legal proceedings. They've rewritten the narrative so completely that I think they actually believe it now." It was exactly what I'd expected. People who had never taken responsibility for their actions weren't going to start now, especially not when the alternative was facing such an uncomfortable truth about themselves. 6 months after that first contact, Dorothy flew to California to visit me. We spent a weekend together, talking more openly than we ever had as children. She brought family photos I'd never seen, stories I'd never heard, and a perspective on our shared childhood that helped me understand how different our experiences had been despite growing up in the same house. "I always thought you were so lucky," she admitted as we walked along the beach near my home. "You got to leave. Start fresh. Build a life that had nothing to do with Oak Ridge or Mom and Dad's expectations." "It wasn't easy," I reminded her. "I left with almost nothing. No support. No safety net. I know that now." She nodded. "But at the time, all I saw was your freedom. I never understood what it cost you." By the 2-year mark, I had established a new kind of relationship with Dorothy, not close, exactly, but honest. Patricia and I exchanged occasional emails, careful but civil. Warren and my parents remained estranged from me by their choice. Aunt Linda kept me updated on family news, respecting my boundaries while ensuring I wasn't completely cut off from my roots. Other relatives fell along the spectrum, some maintaining contact, others taking sides in what they still saw as a family feud rather than a necessary breaking of unhealthy patterns. The most significant change, though, was within myself. For years, I had carried a constant ache of rejection, a desperate hope for acceptance from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. I had measured my worth through their eyes, finding myself perpetually inadequate. Now I understood that their treatment of me had never been about my value. It had been about their limitations, their inability to appreciate differences, their insecurity in the face of my independence, their resentment of success they hadn't achieved themselves. I found myself building deeper friendships, establishing healthier boundaries in all relationships, and approaching life with a newfound confidence. I even started dating seriously for the first time in years. No longer afraid that I was somehow fundamentally unlovable. The foundation I had established grew, helping others who had experienced family financial abuse to recover both materially and emotionally. Speaking with these survivors, I realized how common my experience had been, and how rare it was for people to stand up and demand accountability. 3 years after the reunion incident, I received a handwritten letter from Patricia. She had separated from her husband, was in intensive therapy, and had begun to recognize patterns in her own life that mirrored our parents' behavior. "I understand now why you did what you did," she wrote. "It wasn't about punishment. It was about breaking a cycle. I'm trying to do the same thing in my own way. Thank you for having the courage I lacked." Her words confirmed what I had come to believe, that standing up for myself hadn't just been about justice for one incident. It had been about truth, about consequences, about refusing to participate any longer in a dynamic that harmed not just me but everyone involved. The family reunion that never happened had, ironically, forced a different kind of reckoning, one that was painful and messy but ultimately necessary. Some relationships were lost. Others were transformed. New connections were formed based on honesty rather than obligation. I still think about that day sometimes, standing in the empty community center, listening to my family laugh at my expense over the phone. The humiliation, the hurt, the anger. But those feelings no longer have power over me. They're just part of a story that helped me become who I am now, someone who knows his worth, who sets healthy boundaries, who chooses relationships that bring joy rather than pain. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with you, remember that family should lift you up, not tear you down. Blood ties don't justify abuse. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for others, is to break unhealthy cycles, even when it's difficult. Have you ever had to make a tough decision about family relationships? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story helped you in any way, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember, you deserve respect, no matter who it is that's disrespecting you.